A wagon stopped in the middle of the prairie at sundown. The sky was the color of a peach left in the sun too long. A woman in a black bonnet stepped down from the box, walked around to the back, and lifted out a small girl with brown braids and a thin gray dress. The girl had a tin cup in her hand. She had been holding it since morning. The woman set her down on the grass beside a rut in the trail. She did not bend down. She did not look the child in the face. She said, "Sit here. I will come back for you." Then she climbed up onto the wagon, snapped the reins, and the two mules pulled her away west into the last of the light. The girl stood up. She watched the wagon. She watched it until it was a dot. She watched it until the dot was gone. Then she sat down again on the grass. She did not cry. She put the tin cup beside her boot and she waited. She was 7 years old and her name was Sarah May Calloway, and the woman in the bonnet was her stepmother, and the wagon was not coming back. Stay with me on this one. The sun went down. The prairie went purple, and then gray, and then black. Sarah May had never been outside after dark by herself before. There were sounds out in the grass she did not have words for. Something dry and clicking in the brush. Something far off that called like a hurt dog. She pulled her knees up to her chest. The wind was coming out of the north, and it had teeth in it. Her dress was thin. Her boots were too big. They had been her father's last gift, bought a size up so she would grow into them, and she had not grown into them yet. She did not know how long she sat there. The stars came out. There were more of them than she had ever seen. She tipped her head back and looked up at them, and tried to remember what her father had told her about the stars. He had said the bright one near the handle was the North Star. He had said as long as a person could find the North Star, they were never really lost. She found the bright one. She kept her eyes on it. She held the tin cup in her lap. That was when she heard the horse. It was not the loud kind of hoofbeat. It was the slow kind. A walking horse. A man who was not in a hurry. He came up the trail from the east, a black shape against the stars, and stopped when he was about 20 feet from her. He did not get down right away. He sat in the saddle and looked at her. She could not see his face. She could only see the brim of his hat against the sky. He said, "Little one. Who left you out here?" She did not answer. Her tongue felt like a piece of leather. He swung down out of the saddle. He was tall. His coat was long and dark and split at the back for the horse. He walked slow, the way a man walks toward a deer he does not want to spook. When he was close, he crouched down on his both heels so that his face was the same height as hers. He had a beard. It was brown with some gray in it. His eyes were the color of weak coffee. He smelled of saddle leather and tobacco and wood smoke, and that smell was a smell she knew because her father had smelled like that. She started to cry. She had not cried all day. She had not cried when the wagon left, and she had not cried when the dark came down. But the smell of saddle leather and tobacco and wood smoke broke something in her, and she put her face in her hands, and she cried the way a child cries who has waited too long to cry. The cowboy did not touch her. He waited. He let her cry. When she was done, he pulled a folded handkerchief out of his coat and held it out to her on the flat of his hand, the way a man offers something to a horse that has not made up its mind about him yet. She took it. He said, "What's your name, little one?" She said, "Sarah May." "Sarah May what?" "Calloway." His face did not change, but something in his eyes did. He nodded slow. "Calloway. Out of the Bitter Creek place." She nodded. "Your daddy was Tom Calloway." She nodded again. Then she said, "He died in the spring. He had a cough." The cowboy was quiet for a long second. He looked off into the dark, the way a man looks away when he does not want a child to see his face. Then he looked back. I knew your daddy, Sarah May. I bought a bay horse off him 3 years back. He was a good man. He sold me an honest horse, and he didn't ask top dollar for it. She did not say anything. Who left you out here? My mother. Your mother is dead, Sarah May. I went to her burying when you were a baby. My new mother. She corrected herself the way her father had taught her. My stepmother. Mrs. Hester. She married my pa last winter. The cowboy did not say anything for a while. He just looked at her. Then he stood up. He went to his horse, untied a wool blanket from behind the saddle and brought it back. He wrapped it around her shoulders. It was heavy and it smelled like horse, and it was the warmest thing she had felt in a long time. He said, Sarah May. My name is Wyatt Holloway. I have a ranch about 2 hours' ride from here. My wife is at the house, and my sister is at the house, and there is a stove going and there is soup on it. I am going to put you up on my horse in front of me, and I am going to take you there. And tomorrow when the sun comes up, we are going to figure out what is what. Does that sound all right? She nodded. He lifted her up easy. She weighed about as much as a saddlebag. He swung up behind her. The blanket went around the both of them. He clucked at the horse, and the horse turned and started west, and Sarah May Calloway leaned back against the chest of a man, whose name she had not known an hour ago, and closed her eyes. She was asleep before they had gone a mile. Wyatt Holloway rode through the dark with a child against his chest, and a slow anger building in his ribs. He knew the Calloway place. Everyone on that side of the territory had known Tom Calloway. Tom had homesteaded a piece of bottomland on Bitter Creek when he was 22 years old, and over 30 years he had built it up into something a man could be proud of. 200 head of cattle, a solid house with a real stone chimney, a barn that did not lean, a windmill Tom had put up with his own 2 hands, and in the last few years, a string of good horses that Tom had bred himself and sold honest, the way he did everything else. Then Tom's first wife had died in childbirth with Sarah May. Tom had raised that little girl alone for 6 years. Wyatt had seen them in town once, the spring before, Tom holding the child's hand at the dry goods counter while she picked out a length of blue ribbon for her hair. Tom had paid for the ribbon out of a leather pouch, and Sarah May had carried it home in her own 2 hands like it was made of gold. Then last winter, the talk had come around the territory that Tom Calloway had taken a wife. A widow from back east. Mrs. Hester Prude. She had come west to take a teaching post, and she had ended up in Tom's house instead. Wyatt had not met her. He had heard she was a sharp-faced woman who smiled with her mouth and not her eyes. In the spring, Tom had come down with the wet cough. By April, he was in the ground. Wyatt had ridden over for the burying. He remembered seeing the child at the graveside. He remembered Mrs. Hester standing behind her with both hands on the child's shoulders, hands that did not move and did not comfort. He had thought even then that something about it was not right. But a man does not poke around in another household's grief, so he had ridden home and not thought about it again. Until tonight. Until he had come down the East Trail from selling a pair of geldings in Cottonwood and found a 7-year-old girl sitting in the grass beside the rut with a tin cup. The horse walked steady. Sarah May breathed against his coat. Wyatt looked down at the top of her head, at the brown braids, at the little ear that was cold against his sleeve. He pulled the blanket up higher. He thought about Tom Calloway's ranch. Tom's 200 head. Tom's barn. Tom's windmill. He thought about a sharp-faced woman who had been married into that ranch for less than 4 months when Tom went into the ground. He thought that ranch belongs to this child. And somebody had just taken this child out on the prairie at sundown and left her by the trail. A man does not need to read a deed to know what is going on. He rode. The Holloway Ranch sat in a shallow bowl of land where two creeks came together. The house was a long, low building of milled timber with a deep porch on the south side. Behind it stood a barn, a smokehouse, a bunkhouse for the four hands who worked the place in summer, and a corral that held a dozen good horses. Wyatt Holloway was a rich man by frontier standards. He had been left a small inheritance by an uncle in St. Louis when he was 26, and he had spent the next 20 years turning it into a working cattle outfit that ran 1,000 head on open range. He had married Clara 2 years back. They had no children of their own. Not yet. It was past midnight when his horse came up the lane. The kitchen window was lit. Clara had not gone to bed. Clara never went to bed when Wyatt was on the trail. He rode up to the porch, and Clara came out with a lantern in her hand. She saw the bundle against his coat. She did not ask. She set the lantern down on the railing and held up her arms, and Wyatt passed the sleeping child down to her like he was passing down a sack of meal that mattered very much. Clara took her against her shoulder. She felt how thin the child was through the blanket. She said, "Where?" "Out by the east rut." "Sundown." "Sitting in the grass." "Alone." "Alone." Clara closed her eyes for a second. Then she opened them and looked at her husband, and her voice went level the way it did when she was not going to say what she was thinking out loud. She said, "Come on inside. There's soup." Wyatt's sister Mabel was at the stove. Mabel had come out from Pennsylvania 4 years ago after her husband died, and she had stayed. Mabel was 61, square in the shoulders, gray braided, and the warmest person Wyatt had ever known. When Clara came through the door with Sarah May on her shoulder, Mabel set the ladle down without a word, went to the cupboard, and took out a smaller bowl. They laid Sarah May on the long bench by the stove. Mabel pulled off the 2 big boots. She pulled off the worn stockings. She rubbed the small cold feet between her own warm hands for a long minute, the way you rub the feet of a lamb you are not sure is going to make it through the night. The feet pinked up. The girl made a small sound and turned her face toward the warmth. Clara crouched down beside her. She brushed the brown hair back from the small forehead. She said very soft, "Hey there, sweetheart. You're safe. You're at our house now. You're safe." Sarah May opened her eyes. She looked at Clara. Then she looked at Mabel. Then she looked at the wood stove and the kettle on it, and the bowl of soup that Mabel was setting on the bench beside her. She said, "Is that for me?" Mabel said, "All of it." She sat up. She ate. She held the spoon in her fist, the way a small child holds a spoon. She did not stop to talk. She did not stop to look up. She ate the way a child eats who has not been given enough to eat for a long time. Halfway through, she paused and looked at Clara with the spoon still in her hand, and she said, "Ma'am, am I allowed seconds?" Clara did not trust her voice for a second. Then she said, "You are allowed all the seconds, sweetheart." All of them. Sarah May ate 2.5 bowls. Then she fell asleep with the spoon in her hand and her cheek against the long bench. Mabel and Clara looked at each other across the kitchen. Wyatt stood in the doorway with his hat in his hand. Nobody said anything for a long time. Then Clara said, very quiet, "Who would do this to a child?" Wyatt said, "Her stepmother." Mabel said, "Tom Calloway's place." Wyatt nodded. Mabel sat down on a kitchen chair like her knees had gone out. She had known Tom too. Everybody had known Tom. Clara picked Sarah May up off the bench. The child was a sack of sticks in her arms. Clara carried her down the hall to the small room at the back of the house, the room that had been empty for 2 years because Clara had not yet had a baby to put in it. She laid Sarah May down on the bed. She pulled the quilt up to her chin. She sat on the edge of the bed, and she watched her sleep. She sat there for a long time. Wyatt came in after a while. He stood in the doorway. He said, "Clara." She said without turning around, "She is not going back." He said, "I know." She said, "Not to that woman. Not ever." He said, "I know." She said, "Whatever it takes." He said, "Whatever it takes." Then he went back out to the kitchen, and he and Mabel sat at the table until the sky began to lighten in the east, and they talked low about a sharp-faced woman who had married into a good man's ranch in the winter and buried him in the spring, and a child who had been driven out into the prairie at sundown with a tin cup, and they made a plan. Sarah May slept 12 hours. When she woke up, there was sunlight on the quilt, and there was a woman she did not know sitting in a chair beside the bed. The woman had soft eyes and a yellow braid over her shoulder and a basket in her lap. The basket had a pair of small new boots in it, and a folded dress of dark blue calico, and a pair of clean stockings and a ribbon. The ribbon was blue. Sarah May sat up slow. She said, "Ma'am." Clara said, "Sweetheart, my name is Clara." "Mr. Holloway is my husband. The lady who fed you soup is Mabel, and she is Mr. Holloway's sister. This is our house. You are welcome here. Do you remember coming in last night?" Sarah May thought about it. She remembered the horse. She remembered the chest of a man's coat against her cheek. She nodded. Clara said, "I went into town this morning while you were sleeping. I bought you a few things. I hope I got the sizes right. May I help you get dressed?" Sarah May looked at the boots. They were small. They were the right size. They were the first pair of boots in her life that had been bought for her, and not bought a size up for her to grow into. She put one hand on the leather and ran her thumb along the stitching. She said, "These are for me." Clara said, "These are yours, sweetheart." Sarah May put her face down against the new boots and cried. Clara let her. After a while, Clara reached over and put a hand, very gentle, on the brown braids and said nothing at all. That was the morning Sarah May Calloway came home. By noon, she was at the kitchen table with a piece of cornbread and a glass of milk in front of her. She was wearing the dark blue dress. The blue ribbon was tied in her hair. She had her feet up on the rungs of the chair so the new boots wouldn't touch the floor and get dusty. She was looking out the window at the corral, where a small spotted pony was standing in the sun. Wyatt came in. He hung his hat on the peg. He sat down across from her. He said, "Sarah May, I want to ask you some things. Some of them may be hard. You can stop me any time you want, and we will go look at horses. Is that all right?" She nodded. "Mrs. Hester, your stepmother, how long has she been at the ranch with you?" "Since the snow last year." "After your pa got sick, did she stay with him?" "She stayed in the house. She made me sleep in the lean-to." Wyatt did not let anything show on his face. He said, "What's the lean-to?" "It's where Pa kept the saddles. There's a window, but it doesn't shut all the way. I slept on a feed sack." She said it was because I sneezed and Pa needed quiet. "Did your Pa know you were out there?" "He couldn't see out there from his bed. I went in to see him every morning before she got up. I would sit on the floor by his bed, and he would hold my hand, and we would say a verse together. The one about the shepherd. He liked that one." Wyatt's jaw moved once. "Did your Pa say anything to you before he passed? About the ranch? About what would happen?" Sarah May thought about it. Then she said, "He said the ranch was for me. He said when I was bigger, I was going to run it. He said he had put it down on a paper, and the paper was in a tin box under the floor of the lean-to. He said one day a man would come and read the paper to me, and the ranch would be mine, and nobody could take it." Wyatt sat very still. He said, "Sarah May, the tin box, is it still there?" "I think so. She doesn't go in the lean-to. She says it smells like horse." Could you find it for me? If we went there. The child went pale. She put both hands flat on the kitchen table. She said, Mr. Holloway, please don't make me go back. You are not going back to her, Sarah May. I give you my word on that. Right here. In front of God and Mabel and Mrs. Holloway. You are not going back to live in that house. Not for one night. Not for 1 hour. You are going to stay here with us. But I need to know about that box, because that box is the thing that is going to make it so she cannot ever come and take you again. Do you understand? Sarah May looked at him a long time. Then she nodded. Wyatt stood up. He said, I'm going to ride to the county seat this afternoon. I'm going to talk to a man named Judge Coltrane. He's a friend. He's the law in this territory. Then I'm going to ride to the Bitter Creek place. Mabel and Mrs. Holloway are going to stay right here with you. There are 4 hands at the bunkhouse, and they have orders. Nobody is taking you anywhere. All right. She nodded again. He paused at the door. Then he came back. He crouched down by her chair, the way he had crouched down by her in the grass the night before. He said, Sarah May, you ever ride a pony? No, sir. You see that little spotted one out there in the corral? She nodded. He's 6 years old. He's gentle as a lamb. His name is Biscuit. He's been waiting for a small person to be his person. While I am gone, if you feel up to it, Mrs. Holloway will take you out and you can meet him. He doesn't have to be your pony today. He doesn't have to be your pony ever. But he's there if you want him. Sarah May looked at the pony. Then she looked at Wyatt. Her eyes filled up. She said, Mr. Holloway, why are you being so nice to me? Wyatt thought about it. He thought about it for a few seconds the way a man thinks about a question that he wants to answer right. Then he said, because you needed somebody to be, sweetheart. And I was the one that found you. That makes it my job. He stood up. He put his hat on. He walked out. If you are still with me on this one, hit that subscribe button right now. Sarah May has met Biscuit, but Wyatt Holloway has not yet ridden into Bitter Creek. And what he finds in the tin box under the floor of the lean-to is going to change everything for everyone in this story. Wyatt rode hard to the county seat. He was at Judge Coltrane's house by supper time. Coltrane was a heavy man with a white beard and a careful way of speaking. He had been a circuit judge for 20 years. He had known Tom Calloway. He had also known Wyatt Holloway since Wyatt was a young man buying his first piece of ground. Coltrane sat Wyatt down at his kitchen table, and he poured him a cup of coffee and he listened. Wyatt told him the whole thing. The trail at sundown. The tin cup. The little girl and the 2 big boots. The lean-to. The verse about the shepherd. The tin box under the floor. Coltrane listened without speaking. When Wyatt was done, Coltrane sat back in his chair and he rubbed his eyes with his big hand. He said, Wyatt, I'm going to tell you something that has been bothering me for 2 weeks. Wyatt waited. 3 days after Tom Calloway was put in the ground, a woman came into the county office in Cottonwood. She presented a will. The will named her Mrs. Hester Calloway, formerly Hester Prout, as the sole inheritor of the Calloway estate. Tom's land, his stock, his bank deposits, and his personal effects. The will did not mention the child. Was it Tom's will? It was a will. It had Tom's name on it. It had Tom's signature on it. The signature was witnessed by 2 men. Both of those men, as it turns out, have left the territory in the last month. They went west. They did not leave a forwarding address. Wyatt set his cup down very careful. Coltrane, Tom Calloway told that child that there was a paper in a tin box under the lean-to. He told her one day a man would come and read that paper to her, and the ranch would be hers. Coltrane nodded slow. Tom was not a fool. Tom would not have left a child without a will. Where is the woman now? She has been selling things. Stock first. She sold 60 head 2 weeks ago to a buyer out of Dodge. She has now put the land itself up for sale. There is a buyer coming up from Texas next month. He thinks he is buying the Bitter Creek place clean. He does not know there is a child. There is a child. There is a child. There is a will in a tin box. There is, if we can lay hands on it, a will in a tin box. Wyatt looked across the table. He said, Coltrane, I want to ride there tomorrow at first light. I want a deputy with me. I want a court order if you can give me one. I do not want to give that woman 1 minute of warning. Coltrane stood up. He went to his desk. He sat down at it. He started to write. He said without looking up, You'll have it by sunrise. Wyatt slept 4 hours on Coltrane's spare bed. He was in the saddle before the rooster crowed. With him rode a young deputy named Burns, a soft-spoken man with a tin star and a Winchester rifle across his pommel. They rode hard. They reached the Calloway Ranch by the middle of the morning. The ranch was quieter than it should have been. The corral that had once held 40 horses now held 6. The pasture where Tom Calloway's cattle had run was nearly empty. The barn door stood open, and there was nothing in the barn. Wyatt rode past it and felt his teeth set. The house was a fine log house with a stone chimney and a deep porch. There was a woman on the porch. She wore a black dress with white at the throat, and her hair was pinned tight. She was sweeping. When she saw 2 riders coming up the lane, she set the broom against the wall, and she came to the top of the steps with her hands folded in front of her. She had a sharp face. Her mouth smiled. Her eyes did not. She said, Gentlemen, can I help you? Wyatt reined in at the bottom of the steps. He did not get down. Burns sat his horse a few feet behind, the Winchester across his lap. Wyatt said, Mrs. Calloway? She said, Yes. My name is Wyatt Holloway. I have a ranch about a half-day's ride east of here. This is Deputy Burns of the county. We are here on county business about the Calloway estate. We will need to look inside the house, ma'am, and we will need to look inside the lean-to. I have a paper from Judge Coltrane that says so. Her face did not change at first. Then something moved at the corner of her mouth. A tick. A tiny one. She said, Mr. Holloway, I do not know what business you think you have on my property. It is not your property, ma'am. Not yet. The estate is in probate. The judge has the right to send us. The paper says he sent us. He held out the folded warrant. Burns nudged his horse forward and handed it to her at the top of the steps. She took it. She did not open it. She said, Mr. Holloway, I have been a recent widow. I am trying to set my affairs in order. I do not know what story you have heard, but I assure you that I am the lawful inheritor of this property. My late husband left a will. The will was filed. Wyatt said, Ma'am, where is your stepdaughter? She went still. Then she said very smooth, Oh, poor little Sarah. The child has been very troubled since her father passed. She has run off twice in the last week. Yesterday she ran off again, and I have had 3 men out searching the prairie for her since dawn. I am beside myself. Wyatt looked at her for a long second. He said, 3 days ago a man on horseback found a 7-year-old girl named Sarah May Calloway sitting beside the east rut of the Cottonwood Trail at sundown. He found her there because she had been driven there in a wagon by a woman in a black bonnet who unloaded her from the back of that wagon, set her in the grass, and drove away west. The smile went off her face one corner at a time. Wyatt swung down out of the saddle. Burns swung down behind him. Wyatt said, "Step aside, ma'am. We are going to the lean-to." He did not wait for her answer. He walked past her, around the side of the house, to the small wooden canvas shed where Tom Calloway had kept his saddles. The door hung crooked on its leather hinge. He pushed it open. There was a horse smell. There was a small folded feed sack in the corner. The feed sack had been used as a bed by a child. There was a worn place in it, the size of a small body. Wyatt stood in the doorway for a second, and he closed his eyes. Then he opened them, and he got to work. He took the floor up board by board. The third board, in the back corner under where the saddles used to hang, lifted easy. Under it was a square of packed dirt. He brushed the dirt away with his hand. 6 inches down his fingers struck metal. He lifted out a small tin box. Rust on the corners. A simple latch. He set it on the upturned floorboard. He lifted the latch. Inside, wrapped in a piece of oiled cloth, was a folded paper. He unfolded it. It was a will. It was dated the 8th of February, 3 months before Tom Calloway had died. It was written in a careful hand. It was signed by Thomas A. Calloway and witnessed by 2 men whose names Wyatt knew, because both of them were ranchers in the next valley, and both of them were very much still alive. The will said this: "To my beloved daughter Sarah May Calloway, I leave the whole of my property and estate, including the homestead at Bitter Creek, the stock that runs upon it, all monies on deposit in the Cottonwood Bank in my name, and all personal possessions whatsoever. Until she reaches the age of 18 years, this property shall be held in trust for her, and her trustee shall be my friend and neighbor Mr. Wyatt Holloway of the 2 Creek Ranch, whom I trust as I trust my own brother. Should I have remarried before my death, my wife Mrs. Hester Calloway shall receive a provision of $200 from my bank deposits, and no further claim upon the estate." Wyatt read it twice. Then he folded it up. He put it inside his coat. He stood up. He walked back around the house. She was still on the porch. Burns was at the bottom of the steps, with the rifle held loose across his arm. Wyatt came up to the steps. He looked at her. He said, "Mrs. Prude." She said, "Mrs. Calloway." "No, ma'am." "Mrs. Prude. Your marriage to Tom Calloway entitled you to $200 under the terms of the genuine will, and not 1 inch more. The will you presented to the county office was forged. Your witnesses have run for the Pacific. Tom's witnesses are alive and will testify. The ranch belongs to a 7-year-old girl who is at this minute sitting in my kitchen eating cornbread." The smile was gone. Her face had gone the color of old paper. She said, "You have no proof of." "I have the genuine will, ma'am. In my coat. With your husband's signature and 2 living witnesses and the proper dates. I have a bill of sale from a man in Dodge for 60 head of cattle that did not belong to you. I have a buyer's letter from Texas for a piece of land that was not yours to sell. And I have 1 little girl who is going to grow up on this ranch." "Deputy." Burns came up the steps. "Ma'am, you are under arrest on a warrant from Judge Coltrane. The charges are forgery, theft of estate property, and abandonment of a minor child." She took 1 step back. Her hand went to her throat. She said, "You don't understand. I have nowhere to go. I came west with nothing. If I had not married Tom, I would have starved." "You don't." Wyatt said, "Ma'am, there is a child who slept in this lean-to on a feed sack while you slept in her father's bed. There is a child who you put out of a wagon at sundown 3 days ago because she stood between you and a deed. You can tell the judge how it was you came to do that, and you can tell him every reason you have, and he will write it all down. But you are not going to tell it to me. Get down those steps." She came down. Burns put irons on her wrists. They put her up on a borrowed mare from the corral, the deputy riding alongside with a lead rope. They rode out down the lane. Wyatt stood on the porch for a long minute after they were out of sight. He looked across at the empty pasture. He looked at the barn that had nothing in it. He looked at the fine log house with the stone chimney that Tom Calloway had built with his own 2 hands for his little girl. He went into the house. He found a small wooden trunk in what had been Tom's bedroom. He went through it. He found a few of Sarah May's things. A wooden horse with one ear chipped off. A small embroidered handkerchief with her initials. A length of blue ribbon, the one from the spring before, never used, still tied with a paper tag from the dry goods store. He folded the wooden horse and the handkerchief and the ribbon into a clean shirt of Tom's, and he put the bundle under his arm. Then he walked out to the corral and he caught Tom Calloway's last good stallion, a sorrel with a white star, and he tied it to a lead and he started home. He rode in at sundown. Sarah May was on the porch. She was sitting on the top step in her dark blue dress with the blue ribbon in her braids. Clara was beside her. Mabel was in the doorway. The spotted pony Biscuit was in the corral with his head over the rail, watching the lane. Sarah May saw him coming. She stood up. She did not run down the steps. She waited the way her father had taught her to wait when a man was coming up to the house on a horse, because you did not spook a tired horse with a child running at it. She stood at the top of the steps with her small hands at her sides, and she watched her stepfather not yet but soon ride up the lane with a sorrel horse on a lead behind him. He reined in at the bottom of the steps. He swung down. He took off his hat. He said, "Sarah May, you know this horse." She looked at the sorrel. She looked at the white star. She said, "That's Pa's horse." "That's Whisper." Wyatt nodded. "He's yours now. So's the ranch. So's everything. Your pa wrote it down on a paper, and the paper said so, and the paper has been read out loud in a court of law this afternoon, and a judge has signed his name to it. The lady who hurt you is not coming back. She is in a jail cell tonight and she will go to a trial, and after the trial she will go to prison for a long time. You don't have to be afraid of her anymore." Sarah May did not move for a second. Then she said, "Mr. Holloway." "Yes, sweetheart. Where am I going to live?" He had thought about this on the long ride home. He had thought about it for 2 hours of riding. He had thought about how to say it. He looked up at her on the top step, and he said the thing he had been turning around in his chest. "Sarah May, the ranch at Bitter Creek is yours. It will be yours until you are 18, and then it will be all yours and forever. Until then, I am going to be the trustee. That is what your pa asked me to be. I am going to hire a good foreman to keep the ranch running and the cattle fed and the windmill turning, and I am going to ride over there once a week and check on it. So when you are grown, your pa's place is still there waiting for you, the way he wanted." She nodded. "But Sarah May, a ranch is a place. It is not a home. A home is where the people are that love you. So if you would have us, Mrs. Holloway and Mabel and me would like for you to live here. With us. In this house. In that back room with the quilt. You would be our daughter. We would adopt you, with the judge's seal, so that no one in any wagon ever again can come and take you from a place where you are safe. You would be Sarah May Holloway if you wanted. Or you could keep being Sarah May Calloway, because that's your father's name and you should keep it if you want to. Or you could be both. There's room on a paper for both." Sarah May looked at him for a long time. Then she said, "Sarah May Calloway Holloway." Clara made a sound behind her, a soft one, with her hand over her mouth. Wyatt nodded. He said, Sarah May Calloway Holloway. I'll write it down myself. Sarah May came down the steps. She came down them one at a time the way a careful child comes down steps in two big boots, except these boots fit her now. She came to the bottom. She stopped in front of him. She looked up at him. She said, Mr. Holloway. Yes, sweetheart. Are you my father now? Wyatt Holloway, who had stood in the middle of a courtroom that afternoon and read out the will of his dead friend without his voice breaking once, found that he could not answer for a second. He went down on one knee in the dust at the bottom of his porch steps. He put both his hands on the small shoulders of a 7-year-old girl in a blue dress. He said, Yes, baby. I am your father now. If you'll have me. She put her arms around his neck. She held on. Behind her on the top step, Clara Holloway sat down with her hand over her face. Mabel came out of the doorway and put her hand on Clara's shoulder, and the two women stood and sat in the dusk on the porch of the long, low house and watched a man kneel in the dust with a child against his shoulder. The sorrel stallion blew through his nose and dropped his head. Biscuit nickered from the corral. The wind out of the north had no teeth in it tonight. Somewhere out past the smokehouse, a coyote called once and then went quiet. Wyatt stood up. He had Sarah May on his arm. She had her face in his neck. He carried her up the steps the way he had carried her into the kitchen 3 nights before, and Clara held the door open, and Mabel went to put the soup back on the stove because in this house, on this prairie, in this year of our Lord 1880-something, a child who came home was always met with soup. That winter the snow came early. The trial was in November. The court was packed. The 2 cousins from the next valley came in and testified that Tom Calloway had asked them to witness his real will on the 8th of February, and they had done so at his kitchen table over a cup of coffee. A man from Dodge produced a bill of sale for 60 head of stolen cattle. A buyer from Texas testified to a letter he had received about a property that was not on the market to be sold. Hester Pruitt, who had stopped being Mrs. Calloway the day the warrant came down, stood up in her black dress and tried for a while to say she had been pressured and confused. The jury was out for 11 minutes. She went to the territorial prison at Yuma for 15 years. Wyatt did not take Sarah May to the trial. He sat with her on the porch the day the verdict came back and he told her what had happened, and she listened, and when he was done she said, Mr. Holloway, I want to go see Whisper. So they walked down to the corral together, and she fed the sorrel an apple out of her hand. By Christmas, Sarah May Calloway Holloway was riding Biscuit down to the creek every morning to break the ice for the horses. By February, she had her own small saddle that Wyatt had bought from a saddle maker in Cottonwood, made just for her, with her initials SMCH tooled into the skirt. By spring, she was helping Mabel in the kitchen garden, and she had a kitten she had named Tom after her father, and the kitten slept on her bed every night under the quilt. The Bitter Creek Ranch came back slow. Wyatt hired a good young foreman, a man named Curtis Reed, who moved into Tom's old house and ran the place with a wage and a small percentage of the calf crop. The cattle came back. The horses came back. The windmill turned. Every Saturday morning, Wyatt and Sarah May rode the 4 hours over and the 4 hours back to check on the place that was hers, and on the way home she would lean back against his chest the way she had leaned back the first night, and sometimes she would fall asleep in the saddle, and sometimes she would talk to him about her father in a small, steady voice that did not break anymore. 3 years later, Clara Holloway gave birth to a boy. They named him Thomas, after a man who had been a good neighbor. Sarah May was 10 years old by then. She held the baby on her lap on the porch swing, and she sang the verse about the shepherd over his small new head. The baby looked up at her with eyes that had not yet learned to focus. Sarah May said to him, very serious, I am your big sister and I am going to teach you to ride a pony, and I am going to teach you how to find the North Star, because as long as a person can find the North Star, they are never really lost. Clara, on the steps with a basket of mending, heard her say it. She set the mending down. She put her hand over her mouth for a second the way she had on the night. She had carried a 7-year-old girl into the back room with the quilt. Then she picked up the mending again, and she breathed out, and she did not cry, because there had been enough crying in that house already, and now there was just a porch swing and a baby and a brown-haired girl who had come home. Out at the bottom of the lane, the sorrel stallion stood in the pasture with his white star, head over the rail, watching the road. He did not have to watch the road anymore. There was nobody coming to take anyone away. But he watched anyway. Some habits a horse keeps for life. And in the corral, Biscuit the spotted pony, who had waited 6 years for a small person to be his person, dropped his head into the grass and ate and was satisfied.